Dominic Reed squinted at the readouts on his monitor, watching the electromagnetic interference patterns spike for the third time that hour. The Arctic Research Station Echo 7 creaked around him as another gust of wind hammered against its reinforced walls. Something wasn't right with these readings. "Control, are you seeing this?" He spoke into his headset, adjusting the frequency to cut through the storm's static. Only silence answered. The blizzard had finally severed their last communication link to the outside world. Pulling up the satellite imagery, Dominic tracked the strange energy signature pulsing beneath the aurora borealis. In 15 years of monitoring climate patterns at remote stations, he'd never seen anything like it. The phenomenon seemed to dance with the northern lights, creating impossible patterns that defied every natural law he knew. A warning light flashed on his console. The station's outer sensors were detecting a mass of concentrated energy descending through the atmosphere. Dominic's heart raced as he ran the calculations again. Whatever this was, it wasn't natural, and it was heading straight for them. "Russ, check the perimeter cameras," he called out to his station partner, but received no response. Right, Russ had taken the Snowcat out 3 hours ago to repair the damaged weather station. He should have been back by now. The entire station shuddered as something massive passed overhead, the lights flickering ominously. Dominic grabbed his Arctic gear from the hook by the door, checking the oxygen meter and battery charge. The rational part of his mind screamed that going outside in these conditions was suicide, but years of working in extreme environments had taught him to trust his instincts. "Station log, 2300 hours." He spoke into the recorder as he suited up. "Investigating unusual atmospheric phenomenon. If anyone receives this..." He paused, realizing how ominous that sounded. "Just tracking down Russ. Read out." The airlock cycled with a hiss, and Dominic stepped into hell. The wind hit him like a physical wall, ice crystals stinging any exposed skin. His headlamp barely penetrated the swirling white darkness, but the strange aurora above painted everything in ghostly greens and purples. That's when he saw it, a trail of light cutting through the storm, leading away from the station. Not footprints, but a path of softly glowing snow, as if something radiating energy had passed through recently. The scientist in him wanted to take samples, run tests, document everything. The survivor in him knew there wasn't time. Following the luminescent trail, Dominic pushed through snow drifts nearly as tall as he was. His suit's external thermometer read -60 degrees Celsius, far colder than forecast. The storm seemed to be intensifying around whatever had come down from the sky. He almost missed it in the whiteout, a dark shape half buried in the snow. His first thought was that he'd found the missing Snowcat, but as he got closer, he realized this was something else entirely. The object was smooth, almost organic in its curves, with a surface that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. And there, barely visible in the storm, a figure lay crumpled beside it. Dominic rushed forward, all scientific caution forgotten. The figure was humanoid but clearly not human. Its skin had a silvery sheen that rippled like liquid metal, and what he'd initially taken for hair was actually a crown of crystalline formations that caught and refracted the aurora's light. His hand shook as he checked for vital signs, wondering if alien biology even had vital signs to check. The skin was cool to the touch but not frozen, and he could feel a subtle vibration, like distant music translated into physical form. "Hey," he called out, having to shout over the wind. "Can you hear me?" The figure stirred, crystalline formations chiming softly as they moved. Eyes opened, completely silver, with no pupils or irises, and fixed on him with an intensity that made his breath catch. "The beacon," a voice whispered in his mind, bypassing his ears entirely. "Did you receive the beacon? The energy signature?" Dominic asked, his scientific mind automatically cataloging details even as it reeled from the impossibility of the situation. "That was you." "Yes." The figure attempted to rise but fell back. "I am. Damage." The entry was not optimal. Dominic glanced at the storm-racked sky, then back at the injured alien. I have a research station. Medical supplies. Not exactly equipped for extraterrestrial visitors, but it's better than freezing out here. Those silver eyes studied him for a long moment. You would aid an unknown entity. I'm an engineer at an Arctic research station, Dominic said, already moving to help them up. Helping things that are broken is kind of my job description. Getting an unconscious alien through the station's airlock proved more challenging than Dominic had anticipated. Naira's crystalline formations seemed to react to the station's electromagnetic field, creating small auroras that danced around them as they moved. By the time they reached the medical bay, his instruments were going haywire. "What am I supposed to do with you?" he muttered, helping Naira onto an examination table. Their silver skin rippled like mercury, making it impossible to check for injuries. "I don't suppose your species left an instruction manual." "Heat," Naira's mental voice whispered, weaker than before. "The crash disrupted my thermal regulation." Dominic cranked up the room's temperature controls, watching in fascination as condensation formed on Naira's skin, then absorbed back into it. The crystalline formations began to pulse with a soft light, matching the rhythm of what he assumed was their heartbeat. A crash from the corridor made him jump. "Russ," he called out, remembering his missing partner. "Vacuum." No answer. The station's lights flickered again, and Dominic's unease grew. The storm shouldn't be affecting their power systems this badly. They were designed to withstand the worst the Arctic could throw at them. "Your companion." Naira's eyes opened slowly. He was not at the weather station. Dominic's blood ran cold. "How do you know that?" "Because they took him." Naira attempted to sit up, crystalline formations chiming in distress. "The others. The ones who have been watching." "Others? What others?" But even as he asked, Dominic knew. All those times their instruments had picked up anomalous readings, all those unexplained equipment malfunctions. They hadn't been alone up here. The shadowed ones. Naira's mental voice carried undertones of fear. "They seek what my people would freely share. Knowledge. Understanding. Power." Their silver eyes fixed on him. "They believe humanity is not ready." Another crash, closer this time. Dominic moved to the door, grabbing a heavy wrench from his tool belt. "And what do you believe?" "I believe," Naira said, finally managing to stand, "that any species capable of surviving in this frozen wasteland by choice has potential worth exploring." The lights went out completely, plunging them into darkness broken only by the glow of Naira's crystals. In that ethereal light, Dominic saw their skin shift and flow, forming what looked like armor. "They're here," Naira warned, just as something began cutting through the medical bay's door. Dominic raised his wrench, then nearly dropped it as Naira placed a hand on his arm. Energy coursed through him, making his hair stand on end. The crystalline formations on Naira's head began to resonate, creating a sound that made his teeth ache. "What are you doing?" he gasped as tingling spread through his body. "Sharing," Naira replied. "Your bodies adapt quickly. It is why we chose Earth for contact." The door burst inward, revealing figures that seemed to be made of living shadow. Their edges wavered like smoke, but there was nothing insubstantial about the weapons they carried. "Step away from the human, Lightbringer," one of them spoke, its voice like grinding ice. "Your experiment ends now." "It is not an experiment," Naira's mental voice rang with authority. "The convergence has decided. Humanity is ready." "Ready?" The shadow creature laughed. "They still fight among themselves. They poison their world. They are children playing with forces they cannot comprehend." "Hey," Dominic protested, surprised by his own boldness. "We can hear you, you know." The shadows turned their attention to him, and he felt the weight of ancient eyes studying him. "You defend the Lightbringer, human, even knowing they plan to alter your species forever." Dominic glanced at Naira, seeing the truth in those silver eyes. "Alter how?" "Evolution," Naira answered. "Guided advancement. The next step in human potential." Their hand tightened on his arm. "But only for those who choose it. The energy flowing through Dominic intensified, and he watched in amazement as his skin began to shimmer with the same metallic sheen as Naira's. The shadows raised their weapons. Choice is irrelevant, their leader declared. The timeline must be preserved. The timeline, Naira countered, is not yours to control. They turned to Dominic. Your species values free will above all else. What do you choose? Time seemed to slow as Dominic considered. His entire life had been devoted to understanding the natural world, pushing the boundaries of human knowledge. Now he stood at a crossroads between remaining purely human or becoming something more. The shadow creatures tensed, weapons humming with dark energy. Outside, the storm raged against the station's walls. And through it all, Naira waited, offering a gift that would change everything. I choose, Dominic said, feeling power build within him, to see what's possible. Naira's crystalline crown blazed with light, forcing the shadows back. Then let us show them what humanity can become. The medical bay erupted in a clash of light and shadow, marking the moment when humanity's future took an unexpected turn in a remote Arctic research station. And somewhere in the storm, a snowcat's headlights pierced the darkness, carrying a very confused, but very much alive Russ, back to what had become ground zero for first contact. The real question was, would the station survive what was about to happen next? The transformation rippled through Dominic like liquid starlight. His senses expanded, consciousness stretching beyond normal human limits. He could feel the electromagnetic pulse of the station's generators, taste the metallic tang of the approaching snowcat, and see the quantum threads that bound reality together. This is incredible, he breathed, watching his skin shimmer with otherworldly energy. The shadow creatures took a step back, their dark forms rippling with what might have been concern. The human adapts too quickly, one hissed. The cellular reformation should have killed him. Naira's mental voice held a note of triumph. As I told the Convergence, they are ready. The medical bay door burst open again, this time revealing a snow-covered Russ wielding a flare gun. He took in the scene, his transformed colleague, the glowing alien, the living shadows, and did what any reasonable person would do. He fired. The magnesium flare lit up the room like a miniature sun. The shadow creatures recoiled, their forms destabilizing in the intense light. Dominic felt Naira's approval through their new connection as she used the distraction to pull him toward the door. Your friend has excellent timing, she commented as they ran. Though we should probably explain before he shoots again. Explain what? Russ demanded, keeping pace while reloading the flare gun. Why my partner looks like a disco ball. Why there are shadow ninjas in our medical bay. Or maybe why every instrument in the station is reading off the charts. All valid questions, Dominic acknowledged, surprised by how calm he felt. The energy coursing through him should have been terrifying, but instead it felt right. Like something that had been missing his entire life. Short version. First contact, ancient alien conflict, possible evolution of the human species. Ah, Russ nodded. Tuesday at Echo 7. Got it. They reached the main control room, where Naira immediately began interfacing with their systems. Her crystalline formations resonated with the computers, streams of data flowing like water. The shadowed ones will recover quickly, she warned. We must contact the Convergence before they can summon reinforcements. About that, Dominic moved to help her, finding he could somehow read the alien code streaming across their screens. You said they oppose sharing technology with humanity. Why? Fear. Naira's fingers danced over the controls, leaving trails of light. They believe rapid advancement leads to destruction. They have seen it happen on other worlds. And you disagree? I believe stagnation is a greater threat than progress. She turned those silver eyes on him. Your species teeters on the edge of several major discoveries. Quantum manipulation, consciousness transfer, faster than light travel. The shadowed ones would have you wait centuries to develop these naturally. While you give them to us now, Russ said skeptically, out of the goodness of your heart. Not give, Naira corrected. Guide, share, work together. Her attention returned to Dominic. What you are experiencing is not a gift. It is an awakening of potential that already existed within human DNA. My people merely provided the catalyst. The station's lights flickered again, and the temperature dropped dramatically. Frost began forming on the windows with unnatural speed. They're trying to freeze us out, Dominic realized, watching the environmental controls fail one by one. Can they do that? The Shadowed Ones control darkness and cold, Naira confirmed. It is why they chose this isolated location to intervene. Few witnesses, harsh conditions, and a convenient place to make us disappear, Russ finished grimly. I vote we don't let that happen. Dominic felt the shadow creatures approaching, their presence like holes in reality. But he also felt something else, a warmth building inside him, resonating with Naira's energy. The transformation, he said slowly, it's still spreading, isn't it? I can feel more. Naira nodded. Your consciousness is expanding to its full potential. Soon you will be able to. The windows imploded, showering them with frozen glass as the shadow creatures poured in. But this time, Dominic was ready. Acting on instinct, he reached out with his new senses and grabbed hold of the quantum threads he could now see. Reality bent around him. The transformation rippled through Dominic like liquid starlight. His senses expanded, consciousness stretching beyond normal human limits. He could feel the electromagnetic pulse of the station's generators, taste the metallic tang of the approaching snowcat, and see the quantum threads that bound reality together. This is incredible, he breathed, watching his skin shimmer with otherworldly energy. The shadow creatures took a step back, their dark forms rippling with what might have been concern. The human adapts too quickly, one hissed. The cellular reformation should have killed him. Naira's mental voice held a note of triumph. As I told the convergence, they are ready. The medical bay door burst open again, this time revealing a snow-covered Russ wielding a flare gun. He took in the scene. His transformed colleague, the glowing alien, the living shadows, and did what any reasonable person would do. He fired. The magnesium flare lit up the room like a miniature sun. The shadow creatures recoiled, their forms destabilizing in the intense light. Dominic felt Naira's approval through their new connection as she used the distraction to pull him toward the door. Your friend has excellent timing, she commented as they ran. Though we should probably explain before he shoots again. Explain what? Russ demanded, keeping pace while reloading the flare gun. Why my partner looks like a disco ball. Why there are shadow ninjas in our medical bay. Or maybe why every instrument in the station is reading off the charts. All valid questions, Dominic acknowledged, surprised by how calm he felt. The energy coursing through him should have been terrifying, but instead it felt right, like something that had been missing his entire life. Short version. First contact, ancient alien conflict, possible evolution of the human species. Ah, Russ nodded. Tuesday at Echo 7. Got it. They reached the main control room, where Naira immediately began interfacing with their systems. Her crystalline formations resonated with the computers, streams of data flowing like water. The Shadowed Ones will recover quickly, she warned. We must contact the Convergence before they can summon reinforcements. About that, Dominic moved to help her, finding he could somehow read the alien code streaming across their screens. You said they oppose sharing technology with humanity. Why? Fear. Naira's fingers danced over the controls, leaving trails of light. They believe rapid advancement leads to destruction. They have seen it happen on other worlds. And you disagree? I believe stagnation is a greater threat than progress. She turned those silver eyes on him. Your species teeters on the edge of several major discoveries. Quantum manipulation, consciousness transfer, faster than light travel. The Shadowed Ones would have you wait centuries to develop these naturally. While you'd give them to us now, Russ said skeptically, out of the goodness of your heart. Not give, Naira corrected. Guide, share, work together. Her attention returned to Dominic. What you are experiencing is not a gift. It is an awakening of potential that already existed within human DNA. My people merely provided the catalyst. The station's lights flickered again, and the temperature dropped dramatically. Frost began forming on the windows with unnatural speed. They're trying to freeze us out, Dominic realized, watching the environmental controls fail one by one. Can they do that? The shadowed ones control darkness and cold, Naira confirmed. It is why they chose this isolated location to intervene. Few witnesses, harsh conditions, and a convenient place to make us disappear, Russ finished grimly. I vote we don't let that happen. Dominic felt the shadow creatures approaching, their presence like holes in reality. But he also felt something else, a warmth building inside him, resonating with Naira's energy. The transformation, he said slowly, it's still spreading, isn't it? I can feel more. Naira nodded. Your consciousness is expanding to its full potential. Soon you will be able to. The windows imploded, showering them with frozen glass as the shadow creatures poured in. But this time, Dominic was ready. Acting on instinct, he reached out with his new senses and grabbed hold of the quantum threads he could now see. Reality bent around him. The shadows froze mid-attack, caught in a localized time dilation field. Russ whistled appreciatively. Okay, that was cool. Terrifying, but cool. How did you know you could do that? Naira asked, genuine curiosity in her mental voice. Dominic stared at his shimmering hands. I didn't. I just felt it was possible. He looked at her. Is this what you meant about human potential? Before she could answer, a new alarm blared. The station's radar was picking up multiple contacts approaching fast. Too many to be natural aircraft in these conditions. More shadowed ones, Russ asked, checking his dwindling supply of flares. No. Naira's crystalline crown pulsed with urgency. Worse. They've alerted your governments. Human military forces are incoming. How is that worse than shadow aliens? Because, Dominic said, understanding dawning, they'll want to contain this. Study it. Control it. He met Naira's eyes. They're not ready for the truth. Then we must decide quickly, she replied. The convergence approaches as well. We can escape, continue our work in secret, or we show them all, humans and shadowed ones alike, exactly what humanity is capable of. She held out her hand, energy crackling between them. Your choice, as always. Dominic looked at the frozen shadow creatures, the approaching aircraft, the storm still raging outside. Everything he thought he knew about reality had changed in the space of a few hours. And now he had to decide not just his own fate, but possibly that of his entire species. Well, Russ shouldered his flare gun. Whatever we're doing, we better do it fast. Those time-frozen shadow guys are starting to twitch. Above the station, lights began appearing in the storm clouds, but these weren't the familiar colors of the aurora borealis. The convergence was coming. It was time to choose a side. The wind howled through the broken windows of Echo 7's control room as Dominic made his decision. He grasped Naira's outstretched hand, their combined energy creating a cascade of light that illuminated the storm outside. Whatever happens, he said, we face it together. The frozen shadow creatures began breaking free of the time dilation field, their dark forms writhing with anger. Military helicopters appeared as specks on the radar, closing fast. And above, the convergence's ships descended through the clouds, their impossible geometries challenging human perception. If we're doing this, Russ said, checking the station's external cameras, we need a plan, preferably one that doesn't end with us in a government lab. Naira's crystalline formations resonated with increasing intensity. The convergence brings a gift. Knowledge of your true history. Humanity was never meant to develop in isolation. The shadowed ones interfered millennia ago, limiting your potential. And now you want to unlock it. Dominic finished, understanding flowing through their connection. That's what this transformation is, removing those ancient restrictions. Yes, but it must be done carefully, willingly. Forces your change too quickly cold. The shadow creatures broke free with a sound like shattering glass. Their weapons fired bolts of pure darkness that absorbed all light they touched. Dominic reacted instinctively, creating a barrier of crystalline energy that deflected the attacks. Enough. The Shadow Leader's voice froze the air itself. You risk everything with this foolish experiment. Humanity's path is set. No path is set, Naira countered, her mental voice resonating through the station. Every species has the right to choose its destiny. The military helicopters were close enough now that their searchlights cut through the storm. The convergent ships responded by creating a dome of aurora-like energy over the station, distorting any view from outside. Dominic felt power building within him, new understanding flooding his consciousness. The transformation was accelerating, showing him glimpses of what humanity could become. It was beautiful and terrifying. They're here, Russ announced from his position by the radar. Multiple teams surrounding the station. And something else. Energy readings off the charts. The convergence had landed. They emerged from their ships like living constellations, their forms simultaneously more and less alien than the shadow creatures. Where the shadowed ones were absence, these beings were presence, pure energy given consciousness. The time of choice is upon us. Their voices sang in harmony, filling every mind within range. Humanity stands at a crossroads. Military forces breached the station's lower levels, their radio chatter a chaos of confusion and awe. The shadow creatures pulled back, gathering their darkness around them like shields. Show them, Naira urged Dominic. Show them what humanity can become when freed from artificial limitations. Drawing on their combined power, Dominic reached out to every mind in range. Soldiers, scientists, shadow creatures, and convergents alike. Through their connection, he shared what he had experienced. The expansion of consciousness, the unlocking of potential, the pure joy of discovering what had always been hidden within. This is what we are, he projected, his thoughts carrying the weight of revelation. What we could all be. The soldiers stopped their advance, weapons lowering as wonder replaced fear. Even the shadow creatures seemed to hesitate, their ancient certainty wavering. The experiment is already spreading, their leader hissed. The human's quantum resonance is increasing exponentially. Russ, who had been quietly working at his station, suddenly called out. Guys, the energy readings from Dominic, they're affecting the aurora borealis. Actually, they're affecting the entire planet's magnetic field. On screens around the room, data showed the truth. The transformation wasn't limited to one person or one place. The very fabric of Earth's reality was responding, as if waiting for this moment. It cannot be controlled, the Shadow Leader warned. Once started, this change will cascade through their entire species. That's rather the point, Naira replied, her satisfaction evident. Humanity's potential was never meant to be controlled. The convergence beings moved closer, their light mixing with the aurora above. The choice must still be made. Not by one, but by all. The awakening can be guided, but not imposed. Military commanders were demanding explanations through their radios. Scientists at the station were recording readings that defied their instruments. And through it all, Dominic felt the change continuing, showing him possibilities that his human mind could barely comprehend. If we do this, he said to Naira, if we wake up humanity's full potential, there's no going back. There never is with evolution, she replied softly. The question is, forward to what? The storm reached its peak, the combined energies of humans, shadow creatures, and convergence creating phenomena never before seen on Earth. The choice hung in the balance, remain as they were, safe in familiar limitations, or risk everything for a new future. In the end, it wasn't just Dominic's decision. Through the connection he had created, every human present felt the potential within themselves. One by one, like stars igniting, they began to change. The shadow creatures could only watch as their millennia of work unraveled. The convergence sang their approval. And in the heart of an Arctic storm, humanity took its first steps toward a destiny that had been waiting since the dawn of their species. But no one, not even the convergence, could predict exactly what that destiny would look like. 3 days after the event at Echo 7, the world was still trying to understand what had happened. The aurora borealis now danced permanently in the skies above every latitude, a visible reminder of humanity's transformation. News channels played endless footage of people discovering their new abilities, while governments scrambled to adapt to a reality where their citizens could manipulate quantum fields and communicate telepathically. Dominic stood at the station's repaired window, watching convergent ships glide peacefully alongside human aircraft. His skin still shimmered with crystalline energy, but he had grown used to it now. The transformation had stabilized, leaving humanity changed but still fundamentally themselves. "The Shadowed Ones have retreated," Naira announced, joining him at the window. "They accept that they can no longer maintain humanity's limitations." "And the military?" Russ asked from his workstation, where he was documenting the changes in Earth's electromagnetic field. His own transformation had manifested as an ability to see and manipulate energy patterns. "Learning to adapt," Dominic replied, sensing the steady shift in attitudes as fear gave way to wonder. "It's not every day you have to rewrite every protocol for a species that just evolved past most of your weapons." The convergence had kept their word, sharing knowledge freely but allowing humanity to develop at their own pace. Already, scientists were combining their new abilities with existing technology, making breakthroughs that would have taken decades through conventional means. "There will be challenges," Naira acknowledged, her crystalline crown chiming softly. "Some will resist the change, fear it. Others will try to use their new powers selfishly." "That's humanity for you," Dominic smiled, taking her hand. The energy that flowed between them had become as natural as breathing. "We're not perfect, even with quantum powers and telepathy. But we learn, we adapt, we grow. And that," Naira's mental voice held warmth, "is why my people chose to trust you with this gift." Outside, the new aurora shimmered with possibilities. Research stations around the world reported similar phenomena. People awakening to abilities that had laid dormant in their DNA for millennia. The shadow creature's ancient restrictions were dissolving, allowing human consciousness to expand to its full potential. "The first ships will be ready soon," Russ noted, pulling up holographic projections. "Combining convergence technology with our new understanding of quantum mechanics, we'll be among the stars within months instead of decades." "And what then?" Dominic asked Naira. "What happens when humanity joins the wider galaxy?" "Then," she smiled, her silver eyes reflecting the aurora's light, "then the real adventures begin. The convergence has watched your species for centuries. Your creativity, your resilience, your capacity for both great destruction and incredible kindness. Now you will bring those qualities to the stars." A alert sounded from Russ's console. "Speaking of adventures, the first quantum communication relay is online. We're receiving messages from everywhere. Other civilizations welcoming us to the galactic community." Dominic felt the excitement rippling through the global consciousness that now connected all of humanity. They were taking their first steps into a larger universe, not as conquerors or subjects, but as equals. "The Shadowed Ones were right about one thing," he mused, watching ships dance through the aurora. "We weren't ready before. We needed to understand the responsibility that comes with power." "And now?" Naira asked, though she already knew his answer. "Now we move forward together. Human and alien, science and mystery, present and future." He gestured to the transformed world outside. "Look what we've already accomplished in 3 days. Imagine what we'll achieve in 3 years or 3 centuries." The aurora pulsed with new colors as more humans awakened to their potential. In cities across the globe, People were learning to use their abilities not for personal gain, but to solve problems that had plagued humanity for generations. Energy crisis, environmental damage, diseases, all were being approached with new understanding and capability. The shadow creatures wanted to protect us through limitation, Dominic continued. But real growth only comes through facing challenges, making mistakes, and learning from them. That's the human way. And that, Naira's mental voice carried pride, is why you were worth waiting for. As if in response, the aurora above Echo 7 erupted in a display of light and color that would have been impossible in the old world. But this was no longer the old world. This was the dawn of a new era, where the northern lights were just the beginning of humanity's journey beyond the stars. Russ cleared his throat. So, who's going to explain to the UN that we're basically a new species now? Dominic and Naira shared a look that conveyed volumes without words. Some things about humanity would never change, like using humor to face overwhelming situations. One step at a time, Dominic said, turning back to the window. We have all the time in the universe now. Above them, the aurora continued to dance, a constant reminder that sometimes the most extraordinary changes begin with a simple choice to help someone in need. Humanity had chosen to embrace its potential, to face the unknown with courage and hope. Whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them transformed but undaunted, reaching ever upward toward the lights that had once seemed so far away. The end was just the beginning.